It's often quite difficult to pinpoint exactly why wars happen. Often, a series of underlying causes create the environment that might make a war more likely, though still not necessarily inevitable. These underlying causes can exist for a long time, and so they're often also referred to as long-term causes. These create those conditions where a war can be sparked by an instigating event. A classic example is how built-up tensions between the great powers of Europe in the late 19th and early 20th centuries plunged the continent into war after the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo in 1914. So, what are some common factors that can create these underlying causes? Here we'll look at 5: territorial, political, social, economic, and ideological. Let's start with territorial causes. Here, war might break out over a particular piece of land. For example, two sides might believe that they have a claim to that piece of land. Or perhaps a valuable territory might have resources such as coal or oil. And in other cases, sometimes land can create buffer zones or important access to the sea, and so certain pieces of land have very important strategic geopolitical considerations. Economic causes can also often be related to territorial causes, especially when there's resources in a particular piece of land involved. Right? Resources can considerably make a state wealthier, and so often states that are weak in resources themselves might pursue that through conflict. So a state might go to war with another to secure some resource-rich territory. Sometimes the instigator of the war might not actually be interested in controlling any territory, but through winning a war might see the potential of a peace agreement that will lead to favorable trade deals or favorable trade that will lead to a boost for that instigating country's economy. After all, actually controlling territory has significant challenges that go along with it, and not every state might want to go that far, but might still want access to those resources that another state might possess. Political causes of war exist when multiple factions are vying for the control of a state, so we often see these especially in civil wars. After all, when multiple parties feel like they are the rightful rulers of a state, well, that can certainly lead to conflict. This can also be related to anti-imperial wars or nationalistic wars, where people feel oppressed by the colonial power that's controlling them and rise up in revolution to kick that colonial power out. So that can be another kind of civil war in that situation. Or sometimes specific regions within a state might feel that they're being treated unfairly within the political framework of the state, which again could lead to a civil war. The next category of causes are social causes, and these can be a little bit more nebulous and sometimes difficult to figure out. These arise from ethnic, religious, or socioeconomic tensions within a state. For example, different religions might feel like they should have the rightful access to a territory or to the political control of a state, and that conflict is rooted in those religious differences or religious claims to that state. Sometimes these social tensions might lead to pretty irreconcilable differences, and states might want to break off or separate into their own prospective countries. Social causes are ones that are looked at, for example, very often by historians who look at things from a sort of Marxist perspective, especially when talking about class differences or economic differences as causes of conflict. Finally, ideological differences can also lead to war when groups of different ideologies are again trying to battle to control a particular state. And again, we often see this in civil wars. An example of this is the Civil War in China, where the communists and nationalists fought for control over the Chinese state after the end of the Qing dynasty. In other cases, states might go to war for a bigger ideological picture, where they feel that a particular ideology might be best suited for control of multiple states, or in some cases establishing a certain world order based around a particular ideology. You could, for example, consider some of the wars started by the United States in the last 20, 30 years as an example of the United States wanting to establish sort of a liberal world order around the world through the pursuit of concepts like democratic peace theory, where they wanted to establish democratic nations that would be more inclined to work together towards this liberal world order. As you've probably noticed, there's a ton of overlap among these causes. For example, territorial causes are often linked to economic causes when there's resources involved. And social causes might be exacerbated by economic differences between people in a state. And political and ideological causes are also often linked when the different parties vying for control over a country have different ideological backgrounds. And as you can imagine, wars often have a massive web of layered causes, and one of the things that historians love to argue about is which causes were more significant to different wars. The First World War, for example, drew from most of these causes that we've discussed in this video, and you can check out my video on the causes of the First World War right there. What factors do you think are most important in starting war? Let us know in the comments below. And if you learned something today, give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss anything in the future, ring that notification bell, and we'll see you again next time.